It's been 6 months since Apollo's death, and our numbers are skyrocketing. We have more members than we've ever had. We're still criminals wanted by the police, and since Apollo's death, the few that are left have been working overtime to find us. We've already had many run-ins with them over the last couple of months. Lucas, Dakota, and I are currently in London. We're on our way to get something to eat. Lucas thinks we need to get out more, but I'm just not in the mood to deal with humans on a regular basis anymore. Their screams and cries for help just seem to annoy me. It's close to midnight when we enter Big Mo's diner, and the place is packed, just like everywhere else in London, since it's one of the only places left that hasn't been infected. The waitress is pouring a man at the counter a cup of coffee. She briefly glances up at us and says, "Have a seat, I'll be with you in a minute." The three of us head to a booth in the back of the diner and look over the menu. It's fairly quiet, despite being crowded, besides the occasional sound of silverware banging against a dish. And I can faintly hear the sound of a news program playing in the background. I turn to search for the television when I hear the newscaster announce, "We have breaking news." I locate a small television behind the counter and ask the waitress to turn it up. Once she does, all of the patrons in the diner stop what they're doing and turn their attention toward it. We've just gotten word from the CDC that the unnamed plague that began spreading amongst humans in the United States 6 months ago is now spreading rapidly to the rest of the world. There have now been confirmed cases reported in Africa, France, Germany, Russia, China, and Japan. Doctors still have not identified the cause of the virus. Symptoms include maggots protruding from the skin, blood leaking from the eyes, coughing up a black foam-like substance, and intense hunger that will cause them to try to take a bite out of anything they can get their hands on, including even you. It's very important that if you notice anyone displaying any of these symptoms, avoid bodily contact, which is ultimately what spreads the virus. Me and my photographer Duncan are the only ones left here at our station. The newscaster pauses for a moment and then begins to cry. It cuts to a video clip of Los Angeles, California. Then the newscaster continues. The only way to describe it is pure carnage and destruction. Humans are being chased by some type of creatures and running for their lives. The infected have what appear to be bugs crawling from inside of their skin. The waitress, who is now visibly upset, twists the knob, cutting off the TV. A little boy sitting in a booth with his father says,
"Look, Dad, those are zombies."
His father replies, "I've never seen no zombies that look like that." All of the other customers nod their heads in agreement. I turn to Lucas and Dakota, then we all smile at each other. That's the exact news that we'd been waiting to hear. The waitress says to a man sitting at the counter, "Those damn creatures. I've seen those ugly things taking over these other countries. I'm telling ya, the plague has something to do with those other hairy beasts." Then she says something that causes me to smirk. "It's a good thing we've got the Queen's army to keep them out. They've got everything locked down tight. They'll never let anybody infected get into our country." I think to myself, what a foolish woman. She doesn't know just how wrong she is. The cook yells at the waitress from the back, "Mary, quit the chit-chat and get back to work. We've got customers waiting." She rolls her eyes at him and grabs her notepad and pen from her apron as she approaches our table to take our order. As she begins to tell us the specials, I hear the sound of another car pulling into the parking lot. The bell over the door chimes when the driver enters the diner. He tips his hat to the waitress, greeting her by name. "Good evening, Mary." She turns around to ask him, "You want the usual, Frank?" He nods his head and takes a seat at the counter after hanging his suit jacket on the back of his chair. Once the waitress is finished taking our orders, she heads behind the counter and pours the man a cup of black coffee. He asks her, "Can you pour another? I'm meeting someone here. They should arrive shortly." Mary smiles at him and nods her head as she pulls out another coffee mug and places it on top of the counter. After pouring the coffee, she puts our orders in and brings us our drinks. I nonchalantly sip at my iced tea, not really enjoying it, but just trying to fit in. Mary, the waitress, strikes up a conversation with the man sitting at the counter. After a minute, I hear the cook yell from the back again as he pushes a plate forward under the heating lamp. "Mary, let's go. We've got orders up here waiting. They're getting cold." I let out a long, deep breath. This human pig is really starting to get under my skin. The waitress grabs 3 plates and delivers our food to our table. Then she begins to clear dishes from an empty table nearby and place them into a bin. As she heads back to the kitchen, she slips and drops the bin, causing the dishes to go flying in every direction. She hurries to her feet and rushes to clean up the mess. Some of the other diners offer to help her, but she politely declines. The cook comes from the back through the swinging door out into the diner. He angrily scowls at her and says, "You're such a klutz. You spend all of your time talking and breaking dishes. That's not what I pay you for." She apologizes and then continues to pick up the broken dishes and place them back into the bin as the cook heads back to the kitchen. Just as I put down my sandwich and rise to my feet, a woman walks in and joins the man named Frank sitting at the counter. I decide that I've had enough of the cook. So I follow him to the back, grab him tightly by the throat, and turn his face towards mine so that our eyes meet. "What in the hell?" he manages to choke out while fixated on my glowing amber eyes. As I gaze into his eyes, I chant in almost a whisper, "To all beings of this kind, spread my poison like a vine. Surrender and become one of ours, and kneel before my godly powers." Then I kiss him, spreading my poison. The waitress comes into the kitchen just as he collapses to the ground and begins convulsing. She drops the bin of dishes for the second time and slowly begins backing away from me into the diner. I give Lucas the signal, and he's at the door before I know it. He locks it and then turns around with an evil grin. Dakota tells the waitress, "You don't know how right you are." She looks at Dakota confused, so she continues. "The plague has everything to do with these creatures," she tells her, pointing at the cook as I drag him from the back. The 3 of us begin our transformation just as the asshole cook begins his into my own personal remedy to cure the earth of human scum. My snow-white fur with silver tips and blazing amber eyes command all attention in the room. I announce to them, "I am Artemis." As the diners scream and try to desperately escape, black foam begins to pour from the cook's mouth. He spews it everywhere, hitting the walls and some of the diners, causing them to go into mass hysteria. The waitress tries to run out the back through the kitchen, but I'm a lot faster than her. By the time she makes it to the back door, I'm already on the other side waiting. Drool drips from my lips as my saliva-coated tongue brushes up against my sharp ivory canines. She begs for her life, crying and pleading. I tell her, "Your pleas mean nothing to me. This is only going to make you stronger." Then I attack, sinking my razor-sharp fangs deep into her jugular vein. With my white fur now speckled with her blood, I saunter back inside and see that Dakota and Lucas have finished off all of the diners except for 2. And the other 3 that were hit by the black foam spewed from the cook are now lying on the linoleum convulsing. The man and woman who were seated at the counter are now huddled together in a booth in the corner. The man is shielding the lady. For a split second, I feel a sense of humanity wash over me because the couple remind me of my parents. But just that quick, it's gone again. Then I charge at the 2 of them. The woman's ear-piercing screams echo throughout the empty diner as she watches me murder her husband right before her very own eyes. I tell Dakota that she can finish off the woman. It's the least I can do for not allowing her to have Apollo's killer. When our work is complete, we walk out of there and head to the car. I sit down on the hood as Lucas asks me, "What's next, Artemis?" Before I can respond, I hear pandemonium nearby and walk around the corner to investigate. It's the cook from the diner, running rampant through the streets of London, spreading my poison. I tell Lucas, "We continue to let our puppets do the work for us. Once my poison demolishes the human race, we will take back what has belonged to us all along. Nature will be pure and untouched once again. Our kind will be able to run free and rule the world, just like we once did. Subscribe for a new story Mondays, Wednesdays, and don't forget Saturdays. See you next time on
Nina's Nightmares.
Really? You're supposed to click the like button, not me. Ugh.